Why do you think this hasn't been built before?
So the tool that you'll see that I do is a little bit more focused on a visualization aspect of it versus a straight search engine, which is where most of the other tools tend to play. It comes back to the quote that if it was easy and anyone can do it, then everyone would be doing it.
Hey there, points people! You just heard a clip from Kevin Zanes from the Points Analyst. Kevin uses his big data and analytics expertise to maximize credit card points and miles for cost effective travel. Through the Points Analyst, he shares strategies to help others travel more while spending less. In this episode, expect to hear about the tool that Kevin has built to make finding award space easier and why it's different than some other award search tools out on the market, how the Premium Passport Planner will help users find hard to find saver award space, upcoming features to the Premium Passport Planner, and so much more. And throughout the episode, Kevin mentions how his tool will help find saver award space. One credit card sign up bonus can often earn you enough points for one Saver Space business class ticket to Europe. And one card to consider is the Capital One Venture X card. This card earns 2 points per dollar on all purchases, and the points transfer to a lot of different airline partners, such as Air France and KLM, where you can often find quite a bit of Saver award space. But remember, if you decide to apply for the Capital One Venture X card or any other card, please never ever just directly apply through Google. Always use a friend or creator's referral link. And if you are interested in supporting this show when you apply for your next card, check out geobreezetravel.com/cards. And if you're not sure what card is right for you, I offer free credit card consultations at geobreezetravel.com/consultations. And we have links to the Capital One Venture X card and the free consultation form for you in the show notes as well. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the GeoBreeze Travel Podcast, a show for anyone wanting to level up their travel hacking lifestyle. I'm your host, Julia Menez. I'm a travel hacker, coach, speaker, Filipino-American ENTJ who loves solid travel gear and using shortcuts on spreadsheets. On this show, I'm on a mission to bring you travel hackers from all walks of life to help you level up your travel hacking game. We dive into credit cards, miles, points, strategy, mindset, and the secrets behind how to travel the world for next to no cost. So, let's get hacking. Hey, Kevin. Welcome back to the GeoBreeze Travel Podcast.
Hey, Julia, it's good to be here again.
So last time we talked about Switzerland, which is where you're based now, but in that time, it sounds like you have built a really exciting new points tool for people who want to make finding award deals a little bit easier. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's a relatively new tool, and I know there's a couple of other options out on the market, but I think that the tool I built does things a little bit differently, and happy to walk through what that looks like.
Yeah, with all the different tools that are out in the market right now, what did you think was missing where you're like, oh, I should just build this myself?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when I remember when I was listening to the podcast with Tim from Travel, and he said something that I think we all hear a lot of the times whenever someone builds something new, it's often, hey, I have a problem. I'm going to solve it for myself in an efficient way. And there's probably other people that have the exact same problem. So let me see if this thing can have some kind of utilitarian value out in the market. And so there were a couple of problems that I was trying to solve. Coming back to Switzerland episode, the first problem was I'm a big family. We like to fly business class, not all the time, but some of the time. And finding 6 seats now, since my youngest is now past that 2-year-old stage, so there's no more free flights. So being able to find 6 business class seats was really hard. And the tools that are out there do allow you to kind of enter an amount in there, but it still makes it a little bit hard to find that saver award space or those lower points amounts. So that was kind of one of the problems that I was trying to solve. And the second thing, which I just touched on also, is how do you more efficiently find the saver award space specifically? So if I do a search and I want to fly from, let's just say, New York to Paris, and I want to get that Air France flight, I can do searches on specific days and keep searching. But finding those 50K rates sometimes is a bit hard. The Air France has the trick with the calendar, although it kind of looks like they may have gotten away with that trick with some of their updates, but that was the second thing. And then the last piece of it was more just a general idea of something that I was trying to create. It was just like, first kind of one was, hey, wouldn't it be great if you just had one tool that basically had every award program's award calendar and it was all smashed into one? And it actually worked. Unlike Iberia has an award calendar, and that's great, but it doesn't work half the time. And creating a more functional award calendar and then creating a central place where multiple award calendars come together. So that was vision one. And the second vision was around everyone likes to use Google Flights for cash flights, and it has this great explore feature that everyone loves to use to figure out where they can go travel to for the cheapest amount. So the second kind of idea was, hey, how do we create the points version of that kind of functionality that Google Flights has? So all of those different things kind of came in the tool that I built, and hopefully it lets people find that high quality, high value award space in a little bit more efficient manner. Now, again, the tool is not for everyone. No tool is. This tool does some things really well, and it does some other things not so well. And I'm happy to talk about that. But the things that it does well, I think it does a great job at.
Why do you think this hasn't been built before with all the different apps and websites that are out there and everybody asking for this functionality? Why hadn't it happened already?
It's a great question. I don't think that there's anything that necessarily precluded people from doing it. I think just the way that I've gone about doing this is influenced by my own personal background. So before I started doing stuff with the Points Analyst, I was a senior director for data scientists that looked at doing different kind of data science work and also data visualization. So the tool that you'll see that I do is a little bit more focused on a visualization aspect of it versus a straight search engine, which is where most of the other tools tend to play. If you look at a point.me or Rome.travel or seats.aero, it's more of a search function, kind of direct what we're used to from a search function. Mine focuses a little bit more on the visual aspect to provide that different view of the award space. And the reality is when you are doing things and you're trying to make all those award calendars come together, it's expensive. It's more expensive than some of the ways that other people are doing it. So if you want to get something off the ground quickly, a search engine is a great way to go. This way that I do things is a little bit more kind of data heavy, and there's a kind of higher cost associated with that. So that's probably the two things that are just keeping everyone from doing it. But again, I jokingly say, technically, other people could do it. They just haven't chosen to. And I think that's just given me an opportunity to enter the market here.
When you say expensive, do people just purchase this data from different airline consolidators, or do you mean expensive from it takes a lot of processing power? What is the cost associated with running some kind of search engine like this?
Yeah, there's really two kind of main costs that are associated with it. The first one is what you already talked about is the processing power. It's basically just running the engine that finds all of the award space. And this is a cost that any search engine is going to have. It's just the amount of compute power that it needs to operate. The second thing is around storage costs. And so, depending on how much data you want to store at any given point, how much you pull, your storage costs can either be higher or lower. But the storage cost tends to be the lower of the two between the compute and the storage. And it really just depends on how much you want to do in each of those that'll determine what the cost is. And I think one of the other interesting aspects is not all airline programs are created equal. And so it doesn't take the same amount of compute or storage to access program A versus award program B versus award program C. So there are differences in the award programs in terms of how expensive it is to access the data.
Why are there so many storage costs if once the deal is gone, you don't need to store that data anyway? Don't you just release it and be like, delete this data, bring in the new one? How long do you really need to store any of
You
this?
do. And so it's more of part of what I'm doing is looking further into the future and trying to use the data for a couple of different things. So it's looking at some of the historical data and saying, hey, if you have this award program, when is the ideal time to book? When do award spaces tend to drop throughout the year? And so it's being able to do some of that kind of meta analysis on the data. Now, with that said, I don't keep data forever. I do that where I have data for a little bit, do the analysis that I need, and then I delete it. But the storage costs tend to be a little bit higher because I am doing some of that additional analysis in the background to create some information that I think people would eventually find interesting and hopefully useful.
Yeah, that sounds great. Just being able to do predictive analysis on this type of stuff as well. Is this something that anybody could just do if they were just like, I'll pay storage costs? I guess I'll like download all this data myself and start doing their own analysis? Or do you need to have a data science background to be able to be like, what is going on?
Yes, it is a great question. And it comes back to the quote that if it was easy and anyone can do it, then everyone would be doing it. And I think there is a reason that these types of programs didn't exist really 5 years ago. So, like Seats.arrow, Rome.travel, Point.me, they're all relatively new. And I think it's because we needed technology to get to a point where it became, I call it, more accessible to people in the data science world and a little bit easier to start up the coding, start up the programming, start up the data gathering. But it's definitely not something that anyone can do. And I would say from my personal experience, so again, I'm gonna caveat it, even in the data science community, it takes a very specialized skill to be able to access this data. Just as a general data point, I was looking for a developer when I started this because I don't do my own coding. And when I was looking for that developer to partner with, there was a 95% failure rate. And that's not people I just didn't like, it was people who just could not do it. And that's of data scientists. So people who focus on data scientists, 95% of those could not access the data in the way that we needed it to be accessed.
Yeah, that definitely makes it hard where I know a lot of people are like, "Oh, if we can just pull this data off the internet," because there are ways to just go through and scrape data and stuff. But once you're just sitting there with like a pile of data and spreadsheets, and it's a little bit better than the zeros and ones, but not by a long shot. So then you're just staring at this being like, what do I do with this information? Which is where tools like yours come in handy. So I know a lot of people are interested in a demo of this. So let's fire it up and see what this thing can do.
All right, sounds good. I will present my screen. So the tool really consists of two main pieces. So we have the Explore page and we have the Calendar page. So the Explore page is getting to one of those visions that I talked about at the beginning, which is, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could create something that was very similar to what Google Flights allows you to do and allows you to just explore different deals that exist from a variety of airports. So, one of the unique things that this does is it visualizes all of the different routes around the world. And this does look a bit busy in the beginning, but we can do some filtering. Just as an example, we have a number of things that you can filter on. And this would then update not only the visualization, which is the map here, but also the data table, which contains all of the flight details, which I'll go through in a second. So let's just say that you're someone who is an aviation geek and you really want to fly KLM and get that little blue and white Delft house. So we're going to try to help that person achieve their aviation dream. So under airlines, you can search a variety of airlines. And as you can see, we have a lot like Air France, American, Asiana, Austrian, Delta, Fiji, but we're going to focus on this KLM one. So I'm just going to select the KLM airline. And what you'll see is now the map is updated and it just includes all the routes that are in scope currently that fly between the US to Amsterdam on KLM. So that's a great starting point. But what we really want to do is we really want to find those saver rates. This kind of comes to the second part that I was talking about. So there's another filter up here which calls award rate. And in here, you have the ability to filter on just the saver rates. And so for Air France, the saver rate is defined as those flights that you can get for 50,000 or less if there's a promo award going on points. So now what you see is you still see all the routes, but now in the table below, you have all of the information that you need to be able to find the saver rate on that KLM flight between these major cities in the US to Amsterdam. So some of the information you have is your origin and destination. You have the number of tickets that's available, the award program that you would book it through, the airline that you would fly, the specific flight number and aircraft, And so this can be really important if you're trying to fly a very specific aircraft type. So if you want one of the newer KLM planes, the 787-10 versus one of the older ones like the A330-200, or in a different case, if you wanted to find those Q suites with Qatar Airways, you'd be able to look at the aircraft and be able to, again, assuming you don't get Qatar at the airport, be able to find those. Your class, and again, you can see all of these are the points, and then it also has the taxes and fees that you would be paying on that ticket. And the cool thing about the tool is this now has the data for the entire year. So what you would see is up here you have the July dates, and if I just kind of hyper scroll down to the bottom, you would see this even goes out to next summer in the June 2025 period. And so it has all of those dates that are available. You can say, well, that's great. I really only want to fly in a specific month. Well, you can continue to filter this down and say, hey, I just want to see all the dates that are in June. So you can come into your date filter, filter on just the dates that are in June. Again, your map updates with the new routes that are available. And the data table below is now updated for just the June 2025 dates where you have that save reward space. So it kind of allows you to really filter in pretty quickly on specific award types. And again, the cool thing is it does have that saver award rate filter. It does have the date rate, and you even can filter on the number of tickets down here. So you could even say, okay, I just want routes that have 6 or more tickets. Again, thinking of my family. And then again, this is now flights that are on KLM at the saver rate June 2025 that have 6 or more tickets available for people to fly. And it's all the dates that exist for that specific criteria.
For people who need to find a particular route where they're like, I want to fly from the West Coast over to Europe in this month, does it filter by region as well?
So right now, the filters that we have, you don't display that, but we actually have the data in the background. So if that's something that enough people request, I can actually make that a filter, and it's a pretty quick fix because we already have the data structure set up in the background to accommodate that. So you could just do, hey, I want to fly West Coast to Europe, I want to fly West Coast to Asia, East Coast to Asia. It does have that region award search, but it hasn't been asked for too much yet, which is why we haven't included it. But again, it's actually a pretty easy inclusion.
How do you define what is saver space for different airlines? You mentioned for Air France and KLM, it's anything that's 50,000 points or less for business class. But how would you define that for, let's say, Air Canada or Cathay Pacific or any of the other ones?
Yeah, so essentially what there is there's a big table that sits in the background that has all of these specific route and kind of award program and actual operating airline defined, and the saver space defined for that specific combination of information. And what I'm able to do is use both the searches that I'm doing as well as the actual websites for the award programs to go in and programmatically say what the Saver award space is. So it's unique to the award program, the airline, and the specific route as to what the Saver space is defined as.
How do we make sure there's not phantom availability going on when you're pulling this? Is there like a cross check between different airlines? I know we always recommend please make sure that you're checking it directly on the airline specific website, but how do you make sure there's not phantom availability popping up?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that's just one of the biggest challenges that everyone faces. So this isn't a challenge that would be, unique to my search. I think one of the things that kind of happens is there are specific routes and specific airline combinations where people know or where there tends to be more phantom award space than others. And so those are ones that I do a lot of auditing of the data in the background, because one of the challenges you have is you actually need to physically go through the entire booking process sometimes to be able to tell if the award space is phantom or not. And so I'll just audit a lot of those different routes, especially when they tend to show up and it tends to be a really good deal on that specific route. There tends to be a ton of award space. And if it is something that I find is phantom, then I pull it. And so I take it out of the database so that it's not included. I would say most of the routes that are in here tend not to have that much phantom award space.
You mentioned this works for a lot of airlines, but not all of them. Which ones do you think it works best for, and which ones are still on the to do list to add in?
Yeah, so right now there are 8 programs that are live, 1 program that is in maintenance mode, and 1 program that we're working on that I'll hopefully be able to launch in about a week or 2. So most of the major award programs are in here. I can just do a quick show and tell. But I do know that I also have a couple of other things that I just wanted to show in this quickly later. But for the award programs, it's most of the major programs. So you can see we have Air Canada, Air France, Alaska, American, JetBlue, United. The Etihad one is actually refreshing as we speak, so that one will pop up. The one that is in the maintenance shop right now is Delta, and the one that will be coming online soon is Virgin Atlantic. So once we have all that going and running properly, then there'll be 9 award programs as part of this tool that should cover the vast majority of the award space that people are looking to access. Now, there's a couple other ones that are just a little bit more challenging that I would love to have in the tool, but again, because of how challenging they are, it's just going to be difficult to get them in. And again, it's not a problem that's unique to what I do or the way I do things. It's a problem that everyone faces. So British Airways is a great example of one where everyone wishes they could have it, to have that Avios link. Avianca is another one that is a bit challenging to incorporate. And the other one is Singapore Airlines. So again, not booking Singapore through another program, but native Singapore in the actual Singapore Airlines site itself, just because of how much more award space there tends to be on Singapore's own product when you book it through Singapore Direct.
Can you tell us a little bit more about why those sites are so challenging? Because I find that whenever I'm searching through the aggregators like Rome or Seats.travel, like Rome.travel or Seats.aero, I always have to have a checklist of and check British Airways separately, check Singapore Airlines separately, Cathay Pacific,
Cathay Pacific separately.
Eva Air. There's a whole bunch of these. What is it about those where even with Singapore, I'm not usually searching for partner availability. I just need to look for Singapore availability on Singapore or Turkish airline on Turkish. Why do we always have to search these ones separately?
It really just has to do with the security layer that each of the websites has in terms of being able to access the data. It's pretty simply that some have lower level securities and some have higher level securities. And just depending on where the airline falls within that kind of spectrum will determine whether or not you're able to access the data and bring it into a tool like this or bring it into any of the other tools.
Speaking of security, I know that's something that a lot of airlines are afraid of whenever tools that have this much like usability come into play is fraud and when people just start doing nonsense things. I was talking with Tiffany from Point Me where you guys want to go back into that episode. She was talking about how people will start to do crazy things once they see all of the award availability well past what any reasonable person would do of just trying to book themselves saver space. How do you think we guard against that as a community and balance for just like the normal person to find award availability? These tools are great, but does it also enable people who are bad actors to start doing crazy fraud stuff that just makes the game harder for everybody else to find award space later on?
I think there is obviously that aspect of it. I think part of the reality of where the world is moving to from a points and miles perspective is the fact that some of this kind of high value, scarce award space tends to go really quickly. And one of the examples was, I think a couple months ago, Japan Airlines released a bunch of first class award space on their Dallas route to Japan on the new A350 1000. It was tons and tons of available award space, and I think within 2 hours it was gone. So I think with some of that scarce award space, it's not necessarily going to be a problem because of how quickly it disappears naturally. That doesn't give people a lot of time who are the bad actors to be bad actors. Some of this other award space, like Air France and KLM, which tends to be a little bit more plentiful compared to some of the others, yes, you theoretically could be a bad actor and do some silly things with that award space. I think it's just, up to us to try to look out for people that are doing that. And whenever we see someone doing that, just calling them out on it. But besides that, I mean, the reality is there's not too much else you can do to try to limit that stuff besides just holding people accountable when you see someone doing it.
And for anybody wondering, the types of bad actors we're talking about, it's not like you booked 8 seats and you got a really good deal, like, that's fine. Air France is happy when you're doing that. The kind of things we're talking about is, like, somebody will grab all the award space possible, and then they will sell it on some jankety version of Expedia.com and being like, "Oh, we've got, like, really discounted business class seats. We can get you to business class for, like, mistake fares." But really what's happening is they just booked the award ticket and then they're switching it to your name later on, or it might not work. And then they kind of scammed both things. So that's the kind of like shady nonsense that I know a lot of airlines are afraid of is not just for regular people to book business class for their vacation. They want you to be able to do that. And I think the kinds of people who go into loyalty programs at Air Canada and Air France and all of these other airlines, they understand that's part of the fun of the game. That's part of what builds loyalty is kind of that hunt. What everyone's afraid of is some crazy hacker person going on to Premium Passport Planner and being like, "Oh, now I can just buy up all of the award space with points that I got in some other shady fashion, and I'm just gonna buy up all the award space." So now nobody gets award space and they just have to go through my jankety Expedia to buy them. Is this like a dystopian society that I just made up in my head, or do you ever worry about this too?
I don't necessarily worry too much about that specifically. What I end up worrying about a little bit more is because there's so much data in this tool and because this tool is so powerful and because it has it in, such an easy to read manner, what I'm worried about are two things is one, someone just, you know, paying their access fee, starting up an Instagram account, and then posting all the deals that you can find in the Premium Passport Planner more easily than anywhere else. Similarly, someone starting like a newsletter and saying, hey, here's these amazing award deals that I found, pay to subscribe to my newsletter. So it's that kind of shadow use of the tool and of the data that concerns me a little bit more than the fraudulent guy who's going to buy 700 Air France tickets at 50,000 points a pop and then resell them to people trying to get that award space.
You mentioned people paying the access fees. What are the access fees to gain access to this?
Right now, there's a yearly plan, and the yearly plan starts at $99 a year. And with that yearly plan, you not only get access to the Premium Passport Planner, which I've been demoing here, and I do want to show the calendar function of it as well at some point before we sign off, but you also get the Premium Passport newsletter. So just in case you don't want to come in here and constantly look on the map or use the calendar to find the specific routes that you're looking for, there's also a newsletter that comes with part of the package. And that's your more traditional newsletter where I send it out. People who have the paid version get usually around 5 to 6 alerts per week. And that includes information on how to book it, the different ways you can book it, so all the different programs you can book it, the different rates that you can book it with, any transfer bonuses that are happening, the exact award space. Again, a lot of the information you see in the table down here, I put that in an Excel file that's attached to the alert. Talk a little bit about the experience and also give some tips and tricks on how to earn the specific and relevant points for that specific alert.
Is there like free trials or anything for somebody who's like, I don't want to commit to the full year, but I do want to try this out because this looks really cool? Is there like a monthly version or something like that for
It's
somebody?
Yes. So it is the number one question slash feedback I've gotten after rolling out this tool over the last 6 months is, hey, I'm really interested, but I'd love to do a free trial version. So actually what I'm in the process of doing, hopefully by the end of this week, is switching the subscription over to a monthly subscription. And as part of the monthly subscription, people who sign up new would be able to get a 14-day free trial of both the Premium Passport Plus, which is the newsletter, and the Premium Passport Planner. They would have access to this for 14 days, play around with it. figure out if they like it, and then be able to sign up full time after that, or just continue to receive the free version of the newsletter, which I also send out. It just has a lot less alerts. So that one only has 1 to 2 alerts per week. And then obviously you don't get access to this planner tool that we've been walking through.
Is this only for business class, or does it also have economy deals for someone who's just like, I'm not that fancy yet. I just need to get to Europe for the 15,000 saver space rates they have with Air France?
Yeah, so this tool and the newsletter is only first and business class award space.
Well, makes sense. I see there's a column under award rate that says non-saver. What's that about? Because I know that this is supposed to be tailored to just the saver space.
So you have the ability to filter on the saver space, but one of the things, and this is actually when I was doing the design early on, I kind of went back and forth a little bit with. So again, if we just come back to that KLM example, and I just say, hey, I want to fly KLM, I need the 6 tickets, and I want to fly in the June 2025. So let's just say that is what your search criteria is. And here I haven't done the filter for the Saver Awards. What the database has, and Air France is a great example of this because it has dynamic pricing, is it does have all of the available award space that you can purchase for any day in the year. So if you look through KLM here, what you would see is you do have the 140 rate, the crazy 400,000 rates. You have all of the different rates available to fly. So if someone did just say, hey, I just need to get there on this specific date and I want to fly KLM really badly and I have an unlimited number of points, so points don't matter, you do still have the ability to understand what the rate would be on the specific day that you're looking to book. But the reality is that customer is very, very, very small percentage of the population. Most people are trying to look for that saver space, which is why I eventually put in this filter that allows people to look and filter on just the saver award space. But the unique thing is, again, because all of the saver, non saver rates are customized to each of the programs, some programs don't even have a non saver rate. So, one of the examples of that, and I can just quickly show it here, is if I were to look up Fiji Airlines, it's a great example of this. So, if I look up Fiji Airlines right now, because it's not really part of One World yet, is primarily bookable through Alaska Airlines. But when you book it through Alaska Airlines, it only comes through with one rate, and that's the 75,000 rate with the new changes that Alaska made at the beginning of the year. And that is the saver rate. There is no other rate. There is no non-saver rate. So every piece of award space that you find for Fiji Airlines, as an example, through the Alaska program, is by definition going to be the saver rate. And that's why it changes depending on the award program, the specific airline, and the specific route to determine if there is saver space, if there is non saver space, and what threshold it is for each of those.
I noticed that some of the currencies are in USD and some are in Canadian and some are in euros, depending on what program you're filtering it for. Is there a way to just say, just convert everything to US dollars? Because that can get confusing if you're dealing with different types of currencies.
It can, and I can tell you it's infinitely more confusing to try to convert everything to US dollars just because the exchange rates constantly fluctuate. And the idea was that what I want to show here is what people are going to see on the website. And so I want to make sure that what I'm showing in here is exactly the same as what people would see on the website if they're conducting the same search. And so that way people know that what they see here matches the website and it helps to build the trust within the community versus them seeing one number here and a different number there, even though it's in different currencies. When they see something different, it tends to give people a small amount of hesitation.
That makes sense. This only works with direct flights, correct? If you wanted to connect through France into Nice or something like that with Air France, it's not going to show you those different options. So if you're searching for small airport to small airport, you're going to be like, oh my God, it's not working. Nothing's showing up because you need to just focus on how to get over the ocean. Is that correct?
Correct. It does primarily focus on direct flights from major airports. Now, with that said, because again, everyone's like, well, that's a huge drawback. It doesn't work. What's going on? So here's the reality, at least in terms of my personal audience. If you look at the top 5 airports that people are from who have signed up for the service, it's New York City, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Those are the top 5 airports of people who have signed up, not just for the paid version, but also for the free version. Those 5 airports account for 60% of the total population of subscribers. If I go out to the top 15 airports, which are all major airports, including kind of airports like Miami, Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, Las Vegas, Seattle, those types of airports, it actually goes up to like 85% of the total population. Even though there's a primary focus on the major airports in the US getting direct flights to places around the world in both Europe, Asia, Latin America, it's still taking account 85% of the people who don't need to go from a non-small airport. But yes, the other 10 to 15% of people probably would need to take a positioning flight to get from their smaller airport to one of the larger airports, or vice versa, to get from their large airport to a smaller city in Europe. But again, that is a very small percentage of the population, at least in terms of the subscribers that I have.
That makes sense. So if somebody wants to test this out for themselves and see what different flight deals they can find, where would they find you and where would they find this tool?
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram. So my main account is the Points Analyst, but there's also an account that's dedicated just to showing the flight deals now. It's at the Premium Passport. So those are the 2 accounts on Instagram. And if people are interested in this tool and the newsletter, they can go to my website, thepointsanalyst.com, and there is a section in the header called Flight Alerts. And if you click on that, it'll take you to the place where you can sign up for either the free version or you can sign up for the paid version there as well. And again, follow me on social media because very frequently I offer promotions where I give some different types of discounts on the paid service as well. So be on the lookout for those.
Perfect. Well, thank you again, Kevin, so much for joining us on the show. And I'm sure so many people are really excited to test this out and to give feedback and see what different types of flight deals they can find.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Julia.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the GeoBreeze Travel Podcast. If any of the cards mentioned in today's episode piqued your interest, please check out the links in the show notes for more information on any of the cards. Also, if you apply for a card using the links on that page, I may receive a commission too, so please and thank you. P.S. I hear the links work better in Internet Explorer or Safari, and sometimes the credit card applications tend to glitch out in Chrome. Additionally, it would mean the world to me if you could subscribe to this podcast, leave a 5-star review, and share it with a friend. And if you would like to make even more travel hacking friends, please sign up for the Patreon to access our monthly masterclass hangouts. We dive deep into a particular points program each month, and you'll get to ask all of your travel hacking questions and enjoy being around other people who enjoy points and miles just as much as you and I do. If you would like an invite to the next one, head over to geobreezetravel.com/hangouts to sign up to be on the invite list. Take care and happy travels!